A remarkable single mother healed a dying Mafia boss. You won't believe what happened next. Angela's fingers grazed the faint lines of distress etched across her face in the bathroom mirror, reminders of sleepless nights and relentless worry. Her heart raced with the tension of another day ahead, another shift where she would balance being a dedicated nurse and a single mother to her 2 children. In a small town like theirs, surviving meant adapting, bending until she nearly broke, but never letting her kids see the fractures beneath her fierce love. Today, the hospital buzzed with whispers of the patient in Room 12, Tony the Bull, a name that sent tremors through the very fabric of their community. As she stepped into the room, the murmurs died down and her breath caught in her throat. The notorious Mafia boss lay frail, reduced to shadows of his former self. Her instinct screamed, "Stay away," but beneath the tough facade, she glimpsed vulnerability, a man clinging to life, perhaps desperately searching for redemption. "What's it gonna be, nurse? Are you here to help or to gawk?" he rasped, his gravelly voice surprising her. She clenched her jaw, torn between fear and an unexpected urge to confront this ghost of a man. In that moment, the moral compass internally shifted. She was a healer, sworn to help those in need, even the ones others deemed irredeemable. Day by day, their conversations grew deeper, and Angela's heart wrestled with conflicting emotions. In him, she found a sorrow that echoed her own. Regret spilled from his lips like blood from an open wound. Lost dreams sacrificed on the altar of loyalty, ties binding him to a life drenched in violence. She offered compassion and encouragement, dimly illuminating a flickering hope that maybe, just maybe, there was something left worth saving inside him. Yet with each exchange, the shadows outside her life darkened, the lurking figures around her home an ominous reminder of who Tony was. Staring out the kitchen window while her children played, she felt those eyes on her, a constant unease twisting in her gut. What had she invited into their lives? What fresh hell was surrounding her, threatening the safety she fought so hard to provide? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The phone rang one fateful evening, slicing through the quiet like a knife. It was one of Tony's associates, a hushed voice revealing a betrayal that sent cold dread spiraling through Angela's body. The threat felt so palpable, a chain tightening around her throat. Choosing between protecting her children and helping Tony was tearing her apart. What if trusting him led to disaster? Fear for her children collided with a desperate yearning to understand the man who had unknowingly become entwined in her life. As she stood at the crossroads, the muffled chaos outside crescendoed, ripping cracks through her resolve. Would she stand by the man whose past loomed like an impending storm, or would her instinct to protect her family prevail? Caught between 2 worlds, each breath tethered her to a reality that weighed heavy on her heart. The stakes had never been higher, and her future hung precariously in the balance, destined for a confrontation that would either break or forge her path forward. Angela's breath shuddered as she hung up the phone, her thoughts racing relentlessly in the wake of the ominous warning. The weight of her choices pressed heavily against her chest, blurring the clarity she once clung to. How could she remain loyal to her moral oath as a healer while ensuring the safety of her children? The duality of her life felt like 2 opposing forces tugging at her very essence, each threatening to unravel the threads of resolve she had painstakingly woven. The next day at the hospital, Angela's hands trembled as she prepped the medication for Tony. Each pill represented a choice, a flicker of hope tainted by the shadows of uncertainty. While he lay in his bed, frail yet dominating the space with his raw energy, she caught a glimpse of their shared humanity. "I never thought I'd find compassion here," he said quietly, his gaze intense and searching. She had approached him as a nurse, but was gradually becoming an unintended anchor in his tumultuous sea. The adrenaline from her shift melded with distraction as she mindfully recounted the threats that loomed outside her home. Every glance she exchanged in the hospital hallways seemed to be laden with suspicion and ulterior motives. Her every footstep echoed the unsettling reality of her decision to befriend Tony. That evening, as she tucked in her children, she felt the dread flicker in her heart again, forcing her to confront both her fears and her aspirations. Angela found herself thinking about the life she envisioned for her children, a life shielded from the dark noise of the world. How could she forge a path for them without losing herself in the process? She refused to be perceived as weak, but vulnerability became a quiet ally in her identity as she navigated the complexities of her emotions. In her introspection, she unearthed a revelation. Her ability to empathize was not a liability, it was an asset. She began to realize that the potential for redemption she saw in Tony was echoed in her own need for growth. As a nurse, she had always been attuned to the needs of others, often at the expense of her own. Perhaps it was time she focused that nurturing energy inward. Could she transition from mere survival to genuine thriving? As days passed, conversations with Tony pivoted from bleak reflections to discussions about ambitions and dreams. He spoke of his past decisions with a weight that Angela found relatable. Slowly, their talks shifted, layered with hope rather than despair. One evening, Tony challenged her. "Angela, isn't it time you started living for yourself a bit? You keep giving, but what about your own dreams?" His words struck her with an unsettling force, awakening desires she had buried under the mantle of motherhood and responsibility. What did she want, really? Was it time to reclaim the dreams she had long set aside? The realization ignited a flame within, a gradual awakening she wasn't fully prepared to confront. As Angela stood in front of her reflection days later, she felt a quiet determination envelop her. The fear still lingered, but it was accompanied by the intoxicating prospect of personal evolution. She knew there would be a reckoning. Maintaining the balance between her burgeoning sense of self and the chaos Tony brought into her life demanded a strategy, a calculated approach she was only beginning to envision. Her resolve solidified when she received an unexpected email, a scholarship opportunity for aspiring nurse practitioners, just the kind of chance she kept dreaming of while caring for others. A rush of hope surged through her veins, but doubts also tainted the moment. Would taking this leap mean pulling herself away from Tony and potentially putting her family at risk? Her heart raced as she sat at her computer, fingers hovering over the keyboard. The time had come to take a stand, to face both her fears and aspirations without losing herself in the process. This decision could either catapult her forward or condemn her to the pitfalls of her past. In the agonizing seconds that followed, her resolve wavered. A knock at the door shattered her focus, pulling her from the dilemma. Who could it be at this hour? As she approached, the uncertainty frightened her. She opened the door, bracing herself for what awaited. The tension was palpable. She knew she was about to face a crossroads again. Would this moment be the breaking point or the leap toward her dreams? Angela stared at the door, her heart pounding in rhythm with the unknown. She opened it slowly, unsure of what she would encounter. Standing there was Lucy, her neighbor, holding a batch of cookies, a seemingly innocuous gesture, but one that sent Angela's anxiety spiraling. It was moments like these that revealed the split she felt between her cherished routine and the unpredictable chaos she now inhabited. "Hey, I thought I'd check in," Lucy said brightly, her warmth like summer sunlight cutting through Angela's darkest thoughts. But light could be misleading. casting shadows in corners where old secrets lay hidden. Angela plastered a smile on her face, aware of the conflict brewing beneath her skin. "Thanks, Lucy," she replied, taking the cookies, but her mind drifted back to the email, its promise and peril clashing within her. She invited Lucy inside, careful not to reveal the internal tempest swirling beneath her facade. The conversations around the kitchen table, innocent and mundane, became a theater for her conflict. As Lucy spoke animatedly about her latest sewing project, all Angela could think about was the colossal decision lingering at her fingertips, almost taunting her. What did she want? Was it enough to settle for the stability that bordered on suffocation? The echo of Tony's challenge echoed in her mind. What about your own dreams? After Lucy left, the house settled into a quiet she had come to both crave and dread. She returned to her computer, the email open, blinking, waiting. Each moment stretched as she weighed the scrawled words. The thought of pursuing the scholarship flickered anew, enticing yet fraught with danger. Could she flex her own dreams and aspirations without jeopardizing her children's safety? The duality of aspiration and responsibility ensnared Angela, forming chains she longed to break, yet feared the consequences of shattering. She recalled Tony's words. He had risen from the ashes of his own life, battered but not broken, and here she was, standing still. In that moment, she resolved to create her own strategy, her path to growth, navigating the intricate dance of nurturing her ambition while safeguarding her family. Perhaps it was time to set boundaries, to communicate her need for growth without abandoning the life she cherished. Over the next few days, with heightened clarity and renewed determination, she forged ahead. Angela began by discussing her aspirations with her children, slowly revealing a version of herself they hadn't yet known, the woman who dreamed of more than the walls of their home. They watched her transformation with curiosity, their eyes wide with wonder. What did it mean when Mom shared her goals? The house sparked with contemplation and resolve, as if Angela was constructing a new foundation, one where she would not only care but thrive. Yet threads of doubt still loomed. What if her ambitions pulled her too close to Tony's world? Or worse, what if they ultimately risked her children's safety? As she took careful steps forward, a desire began to crystallize. She wanted to confront Tony, to not only support but to seek guidance from him. They were connected through swirling uncertainties, each bearing their scars, each seeking redemption in their evolving identities. Now, with a bold plan simmering in her mind, she set off toward the hospital, guided by the magnetic pull of Tony's energy and her own aspirations. Yet, as she stepped through the automatic doors, a somber atmosphere enveloped her. She heard hushed whispers about an unknown threat. Tension gripped Angela's heart again. Was this just the beginning of another storm? Would she be able to navigate the unraveling conflict of her responsibilities while daring to step deeper into the unknown? The stakes felt higher now, as the world around her rapidly shifted. She had a choice to confront not just her dreams, but the depth of the darkness that threatened to swallow her whole. And as she took a deep breath, steeling her resolve, she felt a new chapter beginning, not just in her life, but in the lives that intertwined with hers. What awaited her, unseen in the fold of the hospital corridors? Angela stepped into the hospital, the stark fluorescence casting an unyielding glare on her determination. The atmosphere felt heavy, as though it were saturated with secrets and half-whispers. She spotted Tony at the end of the hallway, his frame silhouetted against the pale walls. Her heart quickened. This was a pivotal moment, charged with possibility. As she approached him, she noticed the tension etched into his features. Despite his formidable presence, she sensed an undercurrent of vulnerability beneath the surface. Angela had been so focused on navigating her own transformation that she hadn't considered how his struggles mirrored her own. How had she overlooked that? "Angela," he greeted her, his voice low and rough, the shadow surrounding him deepening her sense of urgency. I didn't expect to see you here. I came to talk, she replied, gripping the strap of her purse, the weight of it anchoring her resolve. About everything. His dark eyes narrowed slightly, as if weighing her words. Everything? That's a lot to unpack. It's about my future and, she hesitated, the thoughts swirling in her mind. And about you, I know we're both trying to find our way. His silence felt like a bridge suspended over uncertainty. It invited her in, yet it also hinted at the chasm of their differing pasts. Finally, he gestured toward a nearby seating area. Let's sit. It seems like we both have a lot we need to say. Sitting across from each other, the energy shifted. Angela studied Tony's posture, relaxed but guarded. Each deep breath he took echoed the weight of his decisions, and she could feel her own burden shifting as she began to voice her dreams. I've been thinking about the scholarship, she confessed. I want to pursue it, but I'm terrified. Why? His question was direct, unembellished. What if it leads me away from my kids, she responded, her voice trembling. What if it pulls me into a world I can't navigate? I don't want to lose them while I'm trying to find myself. Tony's expression softened, and for a moment, Angela saw the struggle that mirrored her own. You're not going to lose them simply because you have ambitions. You have to carve out who you are beyond being a mother, too. It's not abandoning them. It's enriching your life, which in turn enriches theirs, he said, the conviction in his voice palpable. She felt a flicker of hope at his words, but doubt stung her thoughts. And you, what happens if you get deeper into whatever this is? She gestured vaguely, not wanting to overstep, but needing to understand. He exhaled slowly. Honestly, I hope to come out of it whole, but I also don't want to hide from my past anymore. We all have shadows. It's how we deal with them that defines us. Angela realized they were kindred spirits caught in the current of their histories. Here in this hospital, fear and dreams intermingled, binding their hopes together. Maybe it's time to confront those shadows, she suggested, feeling a newfound resolution surging within her, for both of us. The weight of that plan hung in the air, multifaceted and daunting. Encouraged, she leaned in. Would you help me? Can we confront our challenges together? You might have insights that can guide me, and I could support you too. Tony regarded her, a flicker of something unspoken crossing his features. You're sure you want that? It's not an easy path. Nothing worthwhile ever is, she replied, the truth resonating deep in her core. Angela felt a sense of unity as two people willing to navigate the ruins of their pasts together. Yet chaos lingered in the air. From a nearby corridor, she caught a glimpse of figures dressed in dark suits, their presence authoritative and foreboding. Get out of here, Tony hissed suddenly, his demeanor shifting in an instant. What? Why? They're not here for me, he said urgently, his voice igniting her instincts. You have to go. Now. With her heart pounding, she felt every uncertainty plunge back into view. She didn't just have her own aspirations hanging in the balance. This world, with its impending threat, was threatening to unravel everything she had begun to rebuild. Angela, he urged, panic broke through the calm they had briefly forged. Standing at the threshold of her newfound courage and the shadowy maze of danger, she realized she was at a pivotal crossroads, not just for herself, but for Tony too. Was confronting her ambitions worth stepping further into the unpredictable chaos that lay beyond these hospital walls? With a fierce grip on her own resolve, she took a breath, ready to dive into the unknown. But the question loomed, what depths awaited them there? The urgency in Tony's voice sliced through Angela's thoughts, amplifying the adrenaline surging through her veins. She was teetering on the brink of discovery, yet the reality of danger rushed to the forefront. As Tony's intensity fueled her instincts, she felt the binding threads of their shared struggles tighten around them, both imperiling and empowering her. Angela, move! His command jolted her forward, her feet propelling her into action, even before her mind fully grasped the situation. Panic coiled in her stomach, but the narrative of her life was shifting. The clarity she sought lay on the other side of this turmoil, and she had to walk through it. As she turned to navigate the hospital's winding corridors, the fluorescent lights now felt more like spotlights, illuminating her fears and aspirations in stark contrast. Why was she running? What was it about confrontation that terrified her more than shadows lurking in her past? Each hurried step whispered doubts. What if her fight for ambition led her deeper into chaos? With every heartbeat, she wrestled with the implications of diving head first into the unknown. Angela skidded to a halt, her breath catching in her throat. What had she just left behind? She glanced back toward the seating area. Tony, a figure entrenched in complexity and unexpected kinship, was facing whatever threat was on the other side. Should she have stayed? What could he possibly be protecting her from? Angela! His voice broke through the barrage of thoughts, pulling her back with a thread of concern woven through his urgency. We're on borrowed time. You need to get away. Panic surged again, but so did clarity. Her feet found their rhythm as she retraced her steps, propelled by an understanding of her fundamental values. Tony, you can't face this alone, not after we just— Enough, he interrupted, his eyes fierce. I'm not asking you to sacrifice anything. I'm fighting for something bigger than myself, and I won't let you get caught up in it. His determination ignited a flicker of steel in her backbone. What was she if not willing to brave the storm? The opportunity to rediscover herself and redefine her path lay wrapped up in this chaos. It wasn't just about confronting her ambition. It was about understanding who she could become alongside Tony. Fine, she squared her shoulders, her resolve hardening. But I'm not leaving you to fight this alone. We both know there's strength in facing shadows together. The shadows danced in the corners of her mind as they made their way deeper into the hospital labyrinth. Angela could feel the contours of her identity shifting, no longer fearful but resolute. She would not run from the past. She would confront it. Stay close, Tony instructed, his authoritative tone laced with purpose, just as powerful as his presence. Angela fell into step beside him, a partner in the unfolding chaos that mingled with their shared histories. The unfamiliar intensity of their connection forged an alliance, and with it arose hidden competencies they both had yet to unveil. Suddenly, a figure loomed at the intersection ahead. Angela's heart raced. This was it. The confrontation would define not only their moment, but potentially their futures. She caught Tony's eye, a question hanging between them. Were they ready to face whatever lay ahead? On 3, he murmured, and she nodded, her breath steadying. But her inner alarm surged. With so much hanging on this moment, would she discover herself completely in confrontation, or would shadows engulf their choices? I think I'm starting to understand my courage, she whispered fervently, surprising herself with the strength of her conviction. Let's find out together, he replied with an unwavering gaze. Their shared path echoed with uncharted possibilities, and as they stepped into the open, the unknown stretched before them. This would define them, and the journey had just begun. What truths awaited them? Beyond this moment, would they emerge into the light or remain lost in the shadows? The figure ahead shifted, muscles coiling with latent energy, ready to pounce or defend as the tension thickened the air. Angela's instincts triggered, urging her to calculate the risks, yet a deeper whisper stirred within her, a call to embrace this uncertainty. It struck her that this moment was not merely about survival, but a pivotal outgrowth of her evolving self. Move, Tony hissed, tugging her closer as they edged toward the shadowy figure. Every step brought the lurking unknown clearer, and just as fear threatened to buckle her resolve, a distinct fire ignited in her chest. She was not merely a witness, she was a participant in a narrative profoundly greater than her past inadequacies. "Move," Tony murmured, his voice steadied by a combination of urgency and trust. "Stay behind me." As they closed the distance, Angela's heart thundered, threatening to drown out reason. It was a familiar rhythm, a metronome of her past fears. But now it was married to an unwavering awareness that she was reclaiming her agency. If this confrontation would illuminate the path ahead, she refused to be sidelined as merely a frightened observer. In that instant, "Who am I?" the question buzzed in her mind, clashing with every anxious thought that sought to undermine her. Who had she become in light of all the pain, ambition, and struggle? Maybe in facing this threat, she would grasp the full extent of her transformation. The figure flickered in the dim overhead lights, revealing a face that was partially obscured. An overwhelming instinct kicked in. Angela sensed that what lay beneath the surface was a chance at enlightenment, personal growth, or perhaps an unwelcome betrayal. The conflicting emotions roared within her, a maelstrom of steely resolve and trepidation. "Turn around," Tony ordered, his voice a fierce growl that reverberated against the sterile walls. Angela's gut twisted, but she stood firm. Could she be a catalyst for positive change, daring to confront where she had once cowered? Each moment spent side by side with Tony multiplied her strengths exponentially. She realized that teamwork was not merely a survival strategy, it was a bridge to her burgeoning identity. "We can do this," she whispered, mostly to herself. The tether of her earlier thoughts began to fray as new realizations burst forth. Trust, accountability, and resilience woven into each fiber of her being. She had come too far to retreat now. The figure shifted again, a calculated action, as if they had been waiting for a more opportune moment. Angela's breath hitched. This was the moment where she had to confront the deepest shadows of her history, but she also understood that they were not her enemy anymore. The figure moved, revealing a hardened expression of betrayal. "You have no idea what you're stepping into," they sneered, glancing sharply between Angela and Tony. "I'm stepping into my life," Angela retorted, her voice a steady challenge. Venomous as their words were, she recognized the tremor. The fear of exposure hung in the air. There it was, the palpable threat, and it awakened an avalanche of emotions within her. Instead of yielding, she felt each muscle in her body tightening, fueled by an unyielding need to prove, not only to herself, but also the world, that she was not the frightened woman she had once been. During the confrontation, clarity gripped her emerging identity. She took a step forward, closing the gap of uncertainty. "We're ready to define our own terms, understand? It's time you do the same." Tony's eyes widened in surprise, but admiration quickly replaced it. She fought to stifle the fear that threatened to retreat her climb to confidence. Angela's throat tightened as she prepared to face what came next. Would this lead to empowerment and clarity? Or was the threat of true chaos still looming just beyond her grasp? In a moment suspended between action and consequence, what truth would this darkness reveal? Would she seize the burgeoning strength and transform a moment of violence into an act of liberation? Or would she flounder beneath the pressure of expectations? Each heartbeat echoed her realization. She was no longer the person who stood by while life happened to her. "Let's find out," she breathed, igniting the adrenaline coursing through her veins as they prepared for whatever awaited them. Angela's gaze remained fixed on the figure, her awareness sharpened to an almost electric intensity. The air thickened with the weight of unsaid words, a visceral anticipation that wrapped around her. She sensed Tony's quiet strength beside her, a reminder of the alliances she had forged, propelling her into a realm of empowerment she had never before imagined. "I have no intention of backing down," she retorted, her voice trembling slightly but firm. Memories flooded her mind, times when she had bowed to fear, allowing it to dictate her actions. This wasn't just a standoff, it was a moment of reckoning, one that challenged the very core of her identity. The figure before them smirked, a strange mix of amusement and disdain. Brave words, they mocked, yet Angela caught a flicker of uncertainty in their eyes. But bravery without wisdom is recklessness. Doubt crept in like an insidious shadow, a whisper that urged her to retreat. But she shook her head, trying to dispel the nagging sensation that her journey might be veering into folly. This was not merely an encounter with a threat. It was a confrontation with her past choices, her growth, and the essence of who she was becoming. Wisdom? You speak of wisdom as if it's only yours to claim, she shot back, summoning the strength from deep within. With every word, she layered her resolve. I've learned through loss, through confrontation, and yes, even through recklessness. It's how I know I'm capable of so much more than I ever believed. The figure's expression hardened, their facade cracking. Angela took a breath, feeling her heart race. She was doing more than just deflecting the attack. She was challenging berateness. Power dynamics had shifted as she stood her ground, illuminated by the glow of a newfound confidence. The stinging edges of fear still pressed against her, but they only fueled her will to evolve. From behind her, she felt Tony shift, ready to protect her if necessary. "We can walk away, Angela," he whispered, his voice low yet conveying his belief in her potential. "But if we stay, it's up to you to set the terms." Setting the terms. The phrase ricocheted in her mind, igniting early inklings of self-determination she had preserved but rarely wielded. She was profoundly aware that walking away could mean relinquishing this moment altogether. Self-empowerment was not merely to fight, but to embrace the ideas, the choices, and the very identity she was crafting. "Yes," Angela said, speaking with clarity she had summoned from within. "We'll stay, but I refuse to be a pawn in a game I no longer recognize." The figure before them recoiled slightly, their momentary surprise hinting at the effect of her words. It was her first taste of authority, standing against something she had once regarded as immovable. She saw the path ahead illuminated by her fiery determination, a pathway emerging from the shadows of complacency. "Let's talk then," Angela threw out, pivoting the confrontation into a dialogue. Every word emerged from her as a deliberate strike, each statement a step closer to reclaiming her narrative. The air crackled as she grasped hold of the situation, transforming what could have spiraled into chaos into an opportunity for introspection and negotiation. As they began exchanging words, threats, assurances, and veiled motivations, Angela felt the weight of her past overshadowed by the defiance of her current self. Each reply she delivered sharpened her interests further, creating an evolving definition of her potential. In those heated moments, Angela recognized that this confrontation was merely the prelude. True growth lay ahead. But as clarity surged within her, a new realization struck. A larger conspiracy loomed, one that tested the boundaries of her newly found strength. "Are you prepared for what comes next?" Tony asked softly, his concern palpable but laced with admiration for her resilience. "Let's find out what's waiting in the shadows," Angela replied, venturing into a realm she had only begun to grasp. The thrill of the unknown tingled at her fingertips, signaling that this was just the beginning of her quest. What was she truly ready to face, and could she uncover the deeper truths hidden behind this confrontation? Only time would reveal the reality check that awaited on the other side. Angela felt the tension coiling within her, the air electric as she and the shadowy figure locked eyes. No longer was she merely a spectator, she was an active participant in this unfolding drama. It was more than a test of her capability, it was a nuanced dance of power, where every word was A step, each phrase an end-point pirouette. She had transformed into someone who could not only hold her ground, but also step into the intricate web of negotiation, a rare gift she had scarcely acknowledged. "Your past is a burden," the figure said, voice dripping with disdain. "You carry it like a shield, yet you hide behind it." Angela's pulse quickened at the barb, but she repurposed that energy. Blunt criticism had been her companion for far too long. This was an opportunity to confront it head-on. "My past is not a burden, it's my foundation," she countered, her voice steady. "Every mistake and misstep has birthed the strength you see now." Tony remained quiet, but Angela could feel his presence like a silent anthem, augmenting her courage as she weighed her next move carefully. In this moment, she realized that indecision would lead her back to the shadows. Her past wasn't just a series of events, it was a testament to her resilience, a narrative she could wield rather than allow it to wield her. "Then why not embrace it fully?" the figure challenged, their smirk fading, replaced by a shadow of concern. "Why pretend to transform? Why not plunge into the depths it offers?" Angela paused, processing the deeper implication. The figure was unwittingly nudging her toward discovery, urging her to confront the very pieces she'd been hesitant to integrate. Failure had once seemed like a chattel, but maybe it was a teacher with lessons still to impart. "I'll embrace every part of me," she asserted, her voice breaking into fierce conviction. "The losses, the failures, and yes, the fears, they're mine to own, and they've made me more than you know. They've made me relentless." With each declaration, Angela crafted her identity anew, one that was resilient and unyielding. Every word she spoke manifested as a brick in the wall she was erecting, reinforcing her standing. It felt liberating. She wasn't just responding to challenges, but incorporating them into her evolving narrative. The figure's bravado wavered, their surprise evident as they grappled with the implications of Angela's response. The tide of the encounter began to turn. Clearly, they hadn't anticipated that this conversation would shift from an attack to an unraveling of truths. "Relentless as a double-edged sword," the figure remarked, regaining composure, but the glint of uncertainty lingered in their eyes. "Are you willing to face the consequences of that relentlessness? The true cost of confronting your past?" Anger sparked in Angela, mingled with determination. "The cost has already been paid," she declared. "Every scar has shaped me. Every wound has taught me to heal and rise again. If you think I'll stand down now, you've underestimated my resolve." In that moment, she became keenly aware of the shifting dynamics. She was no longer just a pawn in a larger game. She was a player and a strategist, moving deftly on the board. The confrontation was becoming less about fear and more about claiming her narrative. And ironically, "I'll face my truth regardless of the shadows it casts," Angela said, a commitment blossoming within her as the stakes rooted deeper. "And you'll find that there's far more to me than any label you care to bestow." But as the figure's gaze narrowed, a chill spread through her. There would be repercussions for this bold declaration. The darkness lurking in the background was palpable, hovering over her like a storm cloud gathering momentum. She could sense pieces shifting, alliances forming, undercurrents running. Tony touched her arm, a quiet reminder of the solidarity they shared. But a larger question loomed now, one that felt tangible and urgent. What lay ahead once the word settled? Would she find strength in the revelation that her past could empower her, or would it transform into a specter that haunted her next steps? Angela inhaled deeply, preparing herself for the inevitable fallout. One truth lingered in her mind as she braced for confrontation ahead. Sometimes the greatest strength comes from the most vulnerable places. "Let's see where this leads," she said, a flicker of defiance igniting within. But as she anticipated the shadows that threatened her further, she steeled herself for the reality check that would test her once more. What other layers of her past awaited discovery, and what truths would rise from the ashes of confrontation? The air thickened with a simmering tension, each heartbeat echoing in Angela's ears as she processed the impact of her defiance. She had invoked a shift in power dynamics, and now the weight of her boldness settled heavily on her shoulders. Stripped of her previous hesitations, the challenge before her morphed into an unfamiliar terrain. A duality emerged within her, the fear of what might come next and the exhilarating promise of personal liberation. "What are you prepared to lose?" the figure pressed, their voice sharp and probing. This question felt like a knife's edge, prompting her to reflect on all she had fought for and all that might be at stake. Angela's mind racing through memories of battles transcended and victories won, however small they may have seemed in retrospect. "I'm prepared to lose the illusion of safety," she replied, her voice unwavering. That false sense of control was never comforting, it was suffocating. With each passing moment, her awareness of self deepened, revealing layers that had lingered in shadows for too long. This confrontation was far more than a resistance to the figure's taunts. It was a reckoning with her ongoing journey toward authenticity. Joe's silhouette shifted in her peripheral vision, a reminder that she was not alone. His presence was grounding as she visualized her struggles, each disappointment a stepping stone that had paved the way for resilience. She recalled the countless nights juggling demands of motherhood while building her career, plucking hope from the ashes of self-doubt. No longer was she the woman who allowed adversities to define her. She was drawing strength from her very... "You speak of resilience, but that doesn't dissuade the inevitable erosion," the figure insisted, their confidence fraying at the edges. Angela sensed the encroaching doubt in their words, a vulnerability she found intriguing despite the challenge it posed. If they were trying to stall her progress, she was determined to disrupt the continuity of their narrative. Angela's eyes hardened as she considered the opportunities lying ahead. Erosion is part of growth. I've learned the truth behind that vicious cycle. With every layer stripped away, I unearth more of who I am. Her pulse began to settle, aligning with her newfound grounding. The confrontation was no accident. It was a calling to rise and redefine instead of retreating. With each declaration, the shadows of her past transformed into a guiding light rather than a source of torment. If I am to confront this past head-on, there's no room for regret. My scars connect me to my present, a bridge to the uncharted territories of my potential. A flicker of realization crossed the figure's face, and it struck Angela like lightning. They had underestimated the depths of her resolve. Just as she recognized the power of her truth, the heaviness of the past lessened, transforming into a fuel that would propel her forward. This battle was not merely about survival. It was a challenge to expand into the version of herself she always yearned to be. In this moment of clarity, Angela started to formulate a strategy. She felt an emerging capability within her, a resolve not just to defend, but to attack, to command the narrative that had been written for her, instead of allowing it to define her. But as the air shifted around them, a deeper question emerged. What if confronting these truths prompted entirely new conflicts, ones she had yet to anticipate? Could she genuinely begin to dismantle the construct others had placed upon her without suffering further wounds? With her heart racing, Angela met the figure's gaze, her voice steady and unwavering. "You've only scratched the surface of my story. What comes next won't just involve me confronting the past. It will involve a reckoning that could shift the very foundation of everything." A ripple of uncertainty danced across the figure's face, and in that hesitative moment of stillness, an unsettling thought sparked in the back of Angela's mind. What if confronting this power came at a cost greater than she could bear? The stakes were rising, and the shadows around her were thickening. She wasn't just stepping into uncharted territory, she was redefining it. And suddenly, she could sense that the real confrontation was just beginning. As she fortified her resolve, anticipating the layers of complexity yet to unfold, she heard a whisper of doubt echoing in the recesses of her mind. What if facing her truths meant confronting not only her fears, but the risks that hinged on the well-being of those she loved most? As the minutes ticked away in charged silence, Angela steeled herself. The past might have hidden lessons, but the future held questions that were far more daunting. What truths would emerge, and at what cost? The confrontation unfolded like a slow whirlwind, each moment dense with uncertainty but also brimming with potential. Angela stood at the edge of a turning point where the intersection of her past, present, and future crystallized under the harsh lights of the hospital corridor. The shadows no longer felt like an oppressive weight. They transformed into a symbol of the complexity she was prepared to embrace. The figure before her faltered, and for an instant, Angela caught a glimpse of their vulnerability. Perhaps they were not just an antagonist, but a reflection of the fears she had harbored for so long, the fears that had attempted to shackle her ambitions. The irony was not lost on her. In this confrontation, she was wrestling not just with another person's narrative, but with the muted whispers of her own self-doubt. Your recklessness could lead to your destruction, the figure warned, but something had shifted. Angela could sense their confidence waning, the power dynamics ever so subtly favoring her burgeoning sense of self. Destruction or liberation, Angela countered, her breath steady as she pushed deeper into her fearless territory. This was the moment she had anticipated since embarking on her journey of self-discovery. I refuse to be bound by a label you place on me. I define my own path moving forward. As she spoke, she felt the empowerment swell within her, an undeniable force that stemmed from confronting her fears. Every uncertainty that had once held her stationary now propelled her forward, each step a proud assertion of her newfound competence. Do you know what it's like to carry the weight of expectations? She continued, building momentum. To navigate the chaos while managing the stakes of motherhood and the pressure to succeed. I will not dishonor those sacrifices by retreating now. With those words, Angela balled her fists, feeling the strength surging through her core, dissolving the threats surrounding her. For too long, she had existed in the shadows of her roles, a devoted nurse, a loving mother, all while burying her ambitions under the guise of responsibility. It was time for an authentic renaissance. The figure's expression softened, doubt coloring their features. They were no longer a mere adversary, but a testament to the internal battle she had waged. You truly believe you can escape your past? They asked, voice wavering. Yes, Angela asserted, her voice firm. But escaping it isn't about running. It's about embracing every lesson it has to offer. I'm ready to surpass the limits set upon me from both those around me and myself. I won't hide anymore. Suddenly, the aura of fear that had encased her dissolved like mist in the sunlight. Clarity washed over her, reminding her that vulnerability was not a sign of weakness. It was her strength, an authentic component of her evolving identity. What will you do then? The figure posed, a pause, subtle shift as they prepared to concede ground. I will take control of my narrative. Angela felt the pride swell within her. She was stepping into a role she had only dreamed of embodying, cultivating the courage to weave resilience into the fabric of her existence. I will advocate for my dreams, chase the scholarship, and continue developing my skills as a practitioner. I'll manifest a future where my children know bigger horizons are achievable. With each confident declaration, the shadows around her began to scatter, illuminating the path before her. The weight of the past no longer held authority over her actions. Instead, it served as a rich tapestry, one she would proudly display, not conceal. In that moment, something incredible unfurled in her heart. She achieved a solid sense of purpose, a clarity of her identity that didn't rely solely on her roles as mother or nurse. Instead, she was melding these roles into a single, powerful narrative. The figure stood silent, reevaluating Angela's metamorphosis. "You've changed," they muttered. "I've transformed," Angela corrected, her voice carrying strength that echoed down the hallway. "And I'll continue to evolve, not just for me, but for my children, for my future." That final declaration solidified her sense of empowerment. With one last look at the figure, Angela turned to Tony, who watched her with a mixture of admiration and relief. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, concern flickering in his eyes, yet a glimmer of hope emerged. "Yes," Angela breathed, her heart racing with excitement. "Let's walk this path together. If I can rise from the ashes of my past, imagine what we can build together." With that, they forged ahead into the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, arm in arm, united by their resolve for transformation. Angela had transformed into a force to be reckoned with, and she stood triumphant, confident in her own authority and full of ambition. She was ready to grasp the possibilities, embrace the complexities, and explore the uncharted territories of her potential. No longer merely surviving, Angela was now living, thriving, and she felt the boundless opportunities stretch out before her like a sunlit horizon. This was her moment, the culmination of a journey towards self-acceptance, solidifying not just her role in her own life, but carving out a space where all her dreams could flourish without fear. Now, as she stepped forward, the future awaited, bright, optimistic, and full of promise. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending below. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support.